Hey there, Jujutsu Kaisen fans. Today, we're diving deep into the heart of the series, the curse techniques. These powers are the backbone of the whole JJK universe, and we're going to cover every single one that's popped up in the manga. So buckle up, because there's a lot to unpack, from epic shadow creatures to insane soul manipulation. Let's get started. The 10 Shadows technique. Summon some epic creatures. First up, we've got the 10 Shadows technique. This one lets the user summon 10, exactly 10 Shikigami, which are kinda like mystical creatures. They vary in power and appearance, but in Season 1, we got introduced to a few standouts. First, there's Divine Dogs, two mystical pups that can track and hunt cursed spirits like it's nobody's business. Then there's Nue, an electrified bird that can paralyze opponents with its insane thunder powers. And let's not forget Great Serpent, a massive snake that can wrap up enemies and totally immobilize them. Oh, and Toad, which, believe it or not, is a toad that can trap prey in its mouth or rescue people. Talk about versatile. Finally, we have the heavyweight of the group, Max Elephant, which can spew out tons of water and crush opponents with its massive weight. Seriously, who doesn't want a giant elephant on their side in a fight? Moving into Season 2, we get two more Shikigami, and they bring even more chaos. First up, there's Rabbit Escape, which isn't exactly made for fighting. It's more of a distraction technique. Need time to bail or reposition? This is your go-to move. But the big bad of the 10 Shadows crew is definitely Mahoraga. This Shikigami is pretty much unbeatable. It's super hard to control, but it's got this crazy ability to adapt to any attack. Plus, it can slice through cursed spirits like butter with its sword of extermination. That's a name that doesn't mess around. In chapter 218, we meet two new Shikigami, Round Deer and Piercing Bull. The deer can heal with reverse curse techniques and cancel out other curse powers it touches, which is huge in a battle. And the bull, its attacks get stronger the farther it charges. Classic bull move, right? On top of all these crazy creatures, the 10 Shadows technique also lets the user mess around with shadows, storing stuff in them, or even traveling through them. And Megumi's domain makes these shadows act like liquid, which is super weird but also kinda cool. Nobara's Straw Doll technique, deadly voodoo vibes. Next up, we've got Nobara's Straw Doll technique, which is basically JJK's version of voodoo. It's split into two parts, resonance and hairpin. With resonance, Nobara can take a piece of her opponent, like hair or blood, and attach it to a straw doll. Then, when she hits the doll with her hammer, the cursed energy transfers directly to her enemy, targeting their most vulnerable spots. It's like a remote attack that stabs them right where it hurts. Brutal, right? The second part, hairpin, is all about exploding cursed nails. Nobara can detonate the nails she's thrown into the battlefield, creating massive explosions that pack a punch. It's flashy and super destructive, definitely fits her style. Gojo's limitless technique, control space, flex on everyone now. Let's talk about the fan favorite, Gojo Satoru. His limitless technique basically gives him control over space itself. No big deal, right? It's all about manipulating space at the atomic level with cursed energy, and it comes with 4 major moves. First, there's Infinity, which makes it impossible to hit Gojo because there's an infinite amount of space between him and any attack. Imagine trying to punch someone, but no matter how close you get, you never actually reach them. Yeah, it's broken. Then there's Blue, which creates a magnet-like effect by pulling everything toward Gojo by creating a negative distance. He literally makes reality suck in anything nearby. And of course, there's Red, which is the opposite of Blue. Instead of pulling stuff in, Red pushes everything away with twice the power. But when Gojo combines Blue and Red, he creates the infamous Hollow Purple, a move that literally deletes anything it touches by erasing the mass around it. It's basically Gojo saying, I win. Jogo's flame techniques, bringing the heat, literally. Next on the list is Jogo, one of the cursed spirits. His main power is fire, lots of it. He can generate flames and heat-based attacks from his cursed energy, which makes him a walking fireball. Jogo can also create exploding lava bumps and summon ember insects that seek out enemies and explode on contact. The dude's basically a living volcano. Mahito's Idol Transfiguration, messing with souls. Mahito's Idol Transfiguration is where things get real creepy. This ability lets him mess with people's souls, changing their physical form or outright killing them. He can heal himself, turn his body into different weapons, and even clone himself. But the scariest part? He can create transfigured humans, which are these terrifying mutated creatures that do his bidding. Mahito also has soul multiplicity, where he merges multiple souls to create attacks. One of his go-to moves is Body Repel, where fused bodies explode toward the enemy. As if that wasn't enough, Mahito later discovers his ultimate form, Instant Spirit Body of Distorted Killing, which makes him tougher, ST, which makes him tougher, stronger, and even more dangerous. Mahito's abilities are straight-up nightmare fuel. Nanami's Ratio Technique, Finding the Weak Spot. Next, we have Nanami's Ratio Technique, which might sound simple, but it's super effective. He divides his opponent's body into 10 sections and creates a weak point at the 7:3 ratio. All he has to do is hit that weak spot and bam, instant damage. He can also use this technique on objects, making him pretty versatile in combat. Inumaki's Cursed Speech, Commanding with Words. Now, let's talk about one of the coolest techniques, Inumaki's Cursed Speech. This ability lets him command people or cursed spirits with his words. He can say things like run or sleep, and the target has no choice but to obey. The stronger the command, though, the more it drains him. Because of this, Inumaki speaks in food-related words like salmon and tuna in his everyday life to avoid accidents. Gotta love a guy whose words pack that much punch. Blood manipulation. Fight with blood, why not? Blood. Manipulation does exactly what you'd expect. It lets the user control their blood. This technique can be used to create piercing blood, a high-velocity blood bullet, or flowing red scale, which boosts physical abilities by heating up the blood. The downside is that you need to have enough blood to use it, but sorcerers have tricks to get around this, like blood bags or arrows tipped with their own blood. The most skilled user we've seen so far is Choso, who has some unique moves during his fight with Kenjaku. Puppet manipulation. Mechamaru's remote-controlled puppets. Next, we've got puppet manipulation, used by Kokichi Muta, also known as Mechamaru. This technique allows him to control puppets from a distance, and these puppets can have all kinds of abilities. Mechamaru's ultimate puppet even has a bunch of combat options, like swords and cannons. It's like having an army of mini-mechs on standby. Momo's tool manipulation, brooms on autopilot. Next, we've got Momo and her broom. And no, this isn't your average witch on a broomstick situation. Thanks to telepathy, Momo can control her broom like it's on autopilot. She can make it levitate, move around by itself, and basically be the ultimate multitasking tool. But wait, there's more. She's also got this killer move called Wind Scythe. Sounds cool, right? It's a big gust of wind she whips up with her broom, and she can even use it as a signal. Remember the Shibuya incident? Yeah, she used it to communicate during the chaos there. Mai's construction technique, Build a Battle. Now let's talk about Mai and her construction technique. It's kind of like magic Legos, except way cooler and more dangerous. She can make objects out of cursed energy, and they actually stick around. It's not just a one-and-done thing like some techniques. But here's the catch. It takes a ridiculous amount of cursed energy to do this, which means Mai's body takes a beating every time she uses it. For a while, this ability seemed like it kinda sucked because of the toll it took on her. But then, along comes Yorozu. This genius took the construction technique and leveled up, using the energy efficiency of insects to make a liquid metal insect carapace. Yeah, she basically became Iron Man, but with bug vibes. With this trick, she gets a lot more power without burning through all her cursed energy in one go. So, turns out, construction's got some real potential after all. Hanami's plant power, Mother Nature's revenge. Now, let's move on to Hanami, one of the disaster curses. This guy's got a plant fetish, and we mean that in the most dangerous way possible. Hanami can turn cursed energy into plants, big, nasty ones like massive roots, spiked wooden balls, or even cursed buds that literally feed on your cursed energy. Oh, and don't forget the flower field trick that acts as a distraction, like some twisted floral bouquet. There's also this mysterious flower on Hanami's arm, but we never got to see it in action. So your guess is as good as mine when it comes to what it does. Maybe it's just for aesthetics? Toto's Boogie Woogie, clapping his way to victory. Next up, we've got Toto, the big brawny guy, with a surprisingly sharp brain. His technique? Boogie Woogie. No, this isn't some old school dance. This dude can swap the locations of anything with a clap of his hands, as long as the things he's swapping have cursed energy. That could be two sorcerers, a sorcerer and a cursed spirit, or even a cursed weapon and a shikigami. Think about it. One moment you're fighting Toto, and with a single clap, bam, you're now face to face with some monstrous, cursed spirit instead. And the best part? Toto makes this technique look so easy. Like he's out here clapping away and suddenly everything's swapped and you're just left wondering what the heck happened. It's a simple concept, but it's crazy effective, especially in high-stakes fights. The rot technique, toxic blood, anyone. Okay, so now we're entering gross territory with Eso and Kechizu. These guys have a rot technique, which basically turns their blood into toxic sludge. Anything that touches their blood starts corroding, and it can even burn skin. Nasty, right? But wait, there's more. They've got an upgraded move called Decay that takes it up a notch. Anyone hit with their blood gets eroded down to bone in just a few hours. Imagine that slow, painful process. Yeah, no thanks. It's not an instant death for sorcerers, though. It's just super painful. But for regular folks, they're pretty much done for. Moral of the story, don't mess with rot users unless you're ready for some serious skin-burning action. Ghetto's cursed spirit manipulation, gotta catch 'em all. Now we're talking about the man, the myth, the schemer, Ghetto. His technique is basically the Pokemon of Jujutsu Kaisen, cursed spirit manipulation. When he defeats a cursed spirit, he doesn't just exercise it like everyone else. Oh no, he absorbs it and adds it to his personal collection of cursed spirits. And whenever he feels like it, he can unleash them in battle. Pretty convenient, right? But wait, it gets crazier. If the spirit is 2 levels below him, he doesn't even have to fight it. He just absorbs it on the spot. And if that wasn't OP enough, he's got this maximum technique called Uzumaki, where he uses all his cursed spirits at once for a massive attack. Plus, if the spirits are grade 1 or higher, he can even use their special abilities once. Talk about overpowered. Tengen's immortality, the price of eternal life. Alright, so next up is Tengen and his immortality. But immortality isn't all it's cracked up to be, because while Tengen lives forever, his body doesn't stop aging. Yup, every 500 years, he has to find a new plasma star vessel to merge with, or he'll turn into a cursed spirit. Imagine being immortal, but still having to deal with wrinkles and bad knees. Kind of a bummer, huh? Bagman's cloning, the mysterious clone guy. Now, we don't know much about Bagman, but here's what we do know. He's got a cloning technique that lets him make 4 clones of himself, and he can switch places with any of those clones at any time. That's about it, but the fact that he can play hide and seek with himself is still pretty slick. The downside? We don't have much else on him, so moving on. Naobito and Naoya's projection sorcery, 24 frames of fury. Now let's talk about Naobito and Naoya. These guys are playing around with a technique called projection sorcery, which basically turns a second into 24 frames. It's like watching a really intense stop-motion video. They can trace a path in those frames and then carry out their moves super fast, within 1 second. Anything they touch while using this technique also has to follow this 24 frames per second rule. And if you mess up or break the laws of physics, you get frozen in place for a second. Not ideal, but if they can maintain it, they can move at insane speeds, which gives them an edge in combat. It's risky though, because once they set a path, they can't change it. Talk about pressure. Ino's auspicious beast summons. Gotta call in backup. Next up is Ino with his auspicious beast summons. This dude can call on 4 different beasts. The first one is Kaichi, a homing horn that tracks its target and doesn't stop until it hits. Then there's Reiki, which covers Ino in water for protection. We haven't seen much of the other 2 beasts, Ryu and Kirin, but they're probably just as wild. Awasaka's inverse, turning the tables. Jiro Awasaka has a technique that flips the script on his opponents. His ability, inverse, makes hard-hitting attacks weak and weak attacks strong. It's a solid defense, but it has its limits. You can't just go super weak and expect to blast him across the room. It's like Goldilocks. It has to be just right. Ogami's seance technique, channeling the dead. Ogami has a super creepy ability called seance. She can summon a dead person's soul or body and shapeshift into them, or she can have someone else do it. But here's the risky part. If she uses the soul's information instead of the body, she might end up reviving the person's personality, and that could cause a lot of chaos. Mimiko's bird manipulation, murder of crows. And then we have Mimiko, who controls crows with cursed energy. She can make these birds do her bidding, which is great for spying and sneak attacks. Plus, she has this brutal move called Bird Strike, where she forces one of her birds to dive bomb and kamikaze into her target. It's powerful, but only Gojo has survived it, so who knows how tough it really is. Dagon's Water World, Tsunami Time. So where were we? Ah, yes, Dagon. This guy is basically the king of water-based attacks. He can flood entire areas with cursed energy-turned water, summoning tsunamis that would make Poseidon jealous. And to top it off, he can also summon Shikigami, though it seems like those might only show up when he's inside his domain. His water-based attacks are no joke either, and he really makes use of the environment in his fights. Imagine trying to fight while literally drowning. Yeah, not fun. Nanako's photo trick. Say cheese and vanish. Next up is Nanako and her phone-based technique. I know what you're thinking. How dangerous can a phone be, right? Well, Nanako can photograph her subject and then manipulate them using the picture. The coolest part, she can even use this trick on herself to teleport, but only once per photo. Talk about a one-way ticket. It's a pretty slick move if you need a quick escape or want to mess with your opponent. Haruta's miracle technique, saved by dumb luck. Then there's Haruta, who's all about miracles, and not the divine kind. His technique allows him to store up everyday miracles, like avoiding tripping on a banana peel, and then unleashes them when he's in danger. It's like having a magic get-out-of-jail-free card for any life-threatening situation. He can survive things that should definitely kill him, which makes him insanely hard to take down. But the thing is, it's all down to luck, so he's basically the guy who rolls a 20 every time, on a dice. Next, Arata. This guy is the only first year at Kyoto High, so you know he's got something special. His technique? It's like the reversed curse technique, but worse. Sounds brutal, right? Well, he can patch up sorcerers to stop them from bleeding and dull their pain. But here's the catch. It doesn't actually heal anything. It's more like a quick band-aid job to keep them going, and it only works on injuries that happened before he activated his technique. So, not the greatest, but it's better than nothing. Now let's talk about some heavy hitters, starting with Sukuna. At this point, we still don't know what his full-on innate technique is. I mean, the guy's literally the king of curses, and we're still left in the dark. But we do know about two of his sub-techniques, Dismantle and Cleave. Dismantle is your basic slash attack. It cuts up enemies from a distance, no biggie, except it's super effective against cursed spirits. Cleave? That one's extra nasty. It adjusts to the toughness of his opponent, so no matter how strong they are, Sukuna can take them down in one hit. Oh, and don't forget about that unnamed fire attack from Shibuya. We don't know much about it, but hey, fire is always cool, right? Next up is Uraume, and their curse technique is all about ice. Who doesn't love a good ice power? Uraume can create and control ice, and so far, we've seen them use two forms. The first one, Frost Calm, is a game changer. It freezes entire areas, including sorcerers, either trapping them or at least slowing them down. Then there's Icefall, where they telepathically control ice shards. Pretty chill, huh? Alright, now on to Masamichi Yaga, the guy who can create cursed corpses. So what he does is infuse inanimate objects with cursed energy, bringing them to life and making them do his bidding. It's like Toy Story, but with cursed dolls. There's a special case with Panda, though. Panda's a cursed corpse who acts totally independently from Yaga, Masamichi. No one, not even Masamichi himself, knows how that happened. Pretty crazy stuff. Now let's head over to the Zenin clan. These guys don't mess around. Well, most of them don't, but they were all kind of wiped out by Maki in record time. But before that happened, a few of them showed off their techniques. OG's got Blazing Courage, which lets him summon flames from his weapon. And if his weapon breaks, no worries, he can just replace it with flames. Then there's Chojuro, who can summon hands from the ground, which is pretty freaky, and Ranta, who paralyzes people just by looking at them. If he tries to paralyze someone too strong, though, his eyes bleed, so yikes. Junichi, meanwhile, creates massive fists powered by cursed energy, strong enough to take down buildings. So yeah, Zenins weren't here to play. Before we get into the madness of the culling games, let's talk about Kirara real quick. Kirara has this technique called Love Rendezvous. It's super unique. Basically, she marks targets with 5 stars in the shape of the Southern Cross, and they all get connected by cursed energy. The catch? The stars attract each other, so whoever's marked has to approach Kirara in a specific order. Honestly, it's like cosmic tag. Alright, onto the culling games. This is where things get real weird. We've got Hanyu and Harbor up first. These two have interesting powers. Hanyu turns her hair into a plane, while Harbor goes for helicopter mode. I mean, it's kind of goofy, but don't laugh just yet. The downside is, while their cursed energy is focused on their hair, the rest of their body becomes a big ol' weak spot. Hiromi Higuruma is one of the big boys in the culling games, and his curse technique? It's wild. He summons a Shikigami named Judgment, which doesn't sound too crazy until you hear about his domain, Deadly Center. Inside this domain, it's courtroom drama time. Higuruma becomes the prosecutor, and his enemies are the defendants. They've got to defend themselves against Judgment's accusations. Depending on the verdict, Higuruma can get everything from cursed energy boosts to a one-shot weapon. Yeah, this dude's bringing law and order vibes to the battlefield. Next, let's chat about Reggie Star. This guy's power is weird but super versatile. He uses something called contractual recreation, where he burns contracts like receipts, and whatever's written on them, he brings it to life. Cars, spa treatments. Yep, you heard me right. Anything. The things he creates can even act like Shikigami, following his commands, though they disappear once they've done their job. We've also got some smaller characters, like Yori, who blows up detached body parts, kinda gross, and Chizuru, who has this claw hand, but we never actually see him use it. Remy, on the other hand, uses her hair like a scorpion tail, which is pretty cool. And then there's Takaba, the dude with the craziest power. His ability, called Comedian, makes anything he thinks is funny turn real. That's right, if it's funny to him, it happens. This power could be one of the strongest in the show, but Takaba's kinda clueless about how it works. So yeah, it's a mess. Now, over in the Sendai colony, we've got Yuta, one of the major characters. Yuta's got a powerful Shikigami named Rika. Rika's a total beast. She acts on her own. But when Yuta fully manifests her, he gets access to all her cursed energy and abilities. One of Yuta's coolest tricks is being able to copy other curse techniques he's seen. We've seen him copy curse speech, sky manipulation and more, but there are probably a few other conditions he has to meet to pull that off. Speaking of sky manipulation, that's the next technique on the list. Yuro's got this power that lets her manipulate the sky itself, turning it into a surface she can use to her advantage. Offensively, she can shatter the sky with a move called Thin Icebreaker, which doesn't hit her enemies directly but shatters the sky around them. It's kind of a mind-bending technique. And then there's Ryu, the final player in Sendai. Ryu's all about big energy blasts. His main move, Granite Blast, is a huge burst of cursed energy that can literally blow up a city block. If you like big, flashy explosions, this one's for you. Heading to Tokyo Colony number 2, we've got Charles and his technique, G. Warstath. Charles uses his opponent's blood to draw manga panels on them, and these panels let him see into the future. The more blood he draws, the further ahead he can see. It's a pretty niche technique, but it's got potential. Finally, we've got the big baddie, Kenjaku. Kenjaku's innate technique is body hopping, which lets him take over dead bodies and use their cursed energy and techniques. He retains all his old host's powers too. Right now, he's got access to cursed spirit manipulation and something called the anti-gravity system. That's exactly what it sounds like. It negates gravity. It also has a reversal technique that increases gravity in a specific area. We're almost at the end, folks, but we've still got 2 more techniques to cover. First up is Yuki Tsukumo's Star Rage, which gives her virtual mass, allowing her to deal some serious damage. We're talking black holes here, people, but it's a last resort move, since it would take her out too. Lastly, we've got Angel, whose technique nullifies any curse or curse technique, including barriers like the prison realm. Her big move is called Jacob's Ladder, a massive pillar of light that dealt some serious damage to Sukuna. Too bad we don't know much more about her abilities yet. And that's a wrap, guys. We've gone through every curse technique introduced in Jujutsu Kaisen so far. If you had fun, don't forget to subscribe. It really helps me out, and I'd love to have you along for the ride. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.